Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mike Elko, the Texas A&M Aggies land a massive commitment coming out of the transfer portals. Former Purdue edge rusher Nic Scourton commits to Texas A&M. And for those who've been listening the last couple of weeks, this is a name that has popped up for us multiple times as being one of the best edge rushers available in the transfer portal, a top target for a plethora of Power 5 programs. Mike Elko, Texas A&M, able to close this one out after an official visit weekend. Really massive get from Mike Elko, this Texas A&M staff. Want to talk Nic Scourton. Also want to talk about a few other visitors that I'm very intrigued by for Texas A&M later this week. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. This has been such a blast the last couple of weeks covering the transfer portal, talking about all the moving parts of college football, and specifically for Texas A&M fans. You guys have shown a ton of support. This has been a program that I've had a blast talking about. Cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And for the Texas A&M fans listening, this is probably not the last time we're talking Texas A&M today, as Mike Elko just sent out the commitment tweet again. So maybe another commitment coming in the next couple hours. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. And without further ado, let's get into Nic Scourton. And as a Michigan fan myself, watch a lot of Big Ten football. Nic Scourton was one of the more dominant defensive linemen you saw in the Big Ten last year. Led the conference in sacks with 10.5 sacks, 15 tackles for loss, 28 quarterback hurries. Excuse me. A number that really jumps out to me, a 21% pass rush win rate. And Nic Scourton, when you turn on the film for Nic Scourton, he's a guy that is special because he can win in a multitude of ways. This is a guy that at 6'4", 280 pounds has the power in his hands to kind of collapse pockets, get right into tackles, and kind of just put them right in the quarterback's lap, but also has a ton of burst off the edge, being able to win with some speed and bend as well. And when you combine the ability to win with power and speed, that's when you get a special edge rusher. And Nic Scourton, certainly one of those special prospects, I think, for Texas A&M. And what I think I love more about Nic Scourton, again, a phenomenal pass rusher, led the Big Ten Conference in sacks last year. He's a hammer against the run, 25 run stops for Purdue last year. And I feel like that conversation doesn't get had enough with these edge rushers. And yes, you have to be able to go and get the quarterback on those third and longs and be able to pin your ears back. But are you a defensive end? Are you an edge rusher that can win on first and second down too, and kind of take on blocks, stand up blocks, shed blocks, and make tackles in the backfield? Nic Scourton showed the ability to win on first and second down too, stopping the run. And you look at the recipe of what Mike Elko wants to do on defense. We want to win on first and second down, stop teams from running the football. Then when it gets to third and long, we want to bring pressure. We want to get after quarterbacks. And a guy like Nic Scourton helps you win on first and second down, set up those third and long spots. And that is when this Mike Elko defense really does thrive. And for a guy like Nic Scourton, certainly going to help Texas A&M do what they want to do on the defensive side of the football. And for Texas A&M fans, you're starting to see Mike Elko really sink his teeth into the recruiting trail. And when Mike Elko took this job at Texas A&M, we got on and said, Mike Elko is not a Lane Kiffin hire. This is not a flashy hire by any means. He's a calculated coach that's going to go about it the right way. So he spent the first couple of weeks, one, trying to retain some of this roster, but more importantly, I think going through the evaluation phase and finding guys in the transfer portal that he thinks can add value to this Texas A&M team. It wasn't go out and send a ton of offers to players all over the country. It's get our board right, figure out what players we want to bring in and visits and get committed to this program. And you're starting to see the fruits of that labor pay off, right? He was patient. He was calculated. Now he's attacking. And I want to talk about a few more prospects that for me would be great fits at Texas A&M and going and sticking on that defensive line. Another visitor this weekend for Texas A&M, Marshall edge rusher Elijah Alston, and very similar to Nic Scourton, a phenomenal pass rusher, 6 sacks, 11.5 tackles for loss last year, 22 quarterback hurries, an 18% pass rush win rate, but more importantly, a very good player in the run game as well. 21 run stops, an average depth of tackle of 1.2 yards. And that's a number I always look at for defensive linemen because it kind of tells you, are they winning at the point of attack? Are they stacking, shedding blockers, making their plays along the line of scrimmage? And Elijah Alston making his tackles at 1.2 yards of average depth that tells you how he's winning at the line of scrimmage and getting off blocks and making his plays at or behind the line of scrimmage. So Elijah Alston, Nic Scourton would add a ton of value and, more importantly, proven production to this defensive line. You still have a lot of talent on this defensive line that you're excited about in 2024, and you trust Mike Elko is going to elevate their game. But to supplement some of that young talent and maybe unproven talent at times with guys that have done it at the college football level, I think is a really good strategy for Mike Elko. So Nic Scourton, massive commitment. Elijah Alston, a massive target for Texas A&M on that defensive line. And the last guy I want to talk about, and obviously Texas A&M fans very familiar with this player, but really intriguing to me to circle back here, is Denver Harris. And the reason I want to bring Denver Harris up, one, taking a visit to Texas A&M later this week, but more importantly, he's a guy that Texas A&M fans saw the potential that Denver Harris had. And obviously, I don't want to speak too much about him personally, but maybe not the head on straight. Obviously, the culture in that Texas A&M locker room was not great. So it doesn't work out for him during his first stop at College Station, goes to LSU. Obviously, not a phenomenal year for him at LSU. What intrigues me most about Denver Harris is, one, he has the physical talent to be an elite cornerback. And then you pair that up with Mike Elko and the culture that he's going to establish at College Station, and more importantly, the development that Mike Elko has for cornerbacks. That's what excites you the most, right? You pair Denver Harris up in elite talent. We saw him as a true freshman at Texas A&M do some really good things, and you pair that up with being in a better spot from a culture standpoint in your locker room. But more importantly, Mike Elko, you can't really think of many head coaches across the country that have had more success developing guys in the secondary than Mike Elko. He did a phenomenal job with that Duke secondary in a short stint at Duke, evaluating guys in the portal, getting them into the program, and coaching them up. A guy like Denver Harris, when you combine the better locker room culture and the development that Mike Elko can offer Denver Harris, I think would be a massive combination. And I wouldn't be surprised if you get a guy like Denver Harris, who probably flies under the radar a little bit in terms of transfer portal gets, absolutely show out in the 2024 season. And you take a look at what Texas A&M is doing in the transfer portal, hammering the secondary spot. And to pair up with Denver Harris, I want to go back and talk about a guy like Will Lee, because many of you guys who've heard my take on Will Lee is very similar to Denver Harris. Now, Will Lee has put it on the field at a little bit more of a consistent clip than Denver Harris, but the MO about Will Lee is very similar to Denver Harris in terms of all the traits in the world. Will Lee probably would have been drafted in the NFL had he declared, but is a guy that has a lot of meat left on the bone in terms of what he can do at that cornerback position. And we saw against Oklahoma State, that was a problem. Texas A&M just did not have the guys in that back end to deal with some of the physicality Oklahoma State had at the wide receiver position. Will Lee, Denver Harris, two cornerbacks that I think have massive potential to be all SEC caliber guys. Really excites me to think about what this Texas A&M secondary might look with Will Lee and Denver Harris added to this room. And it doesn't sound like it's stopping now, right? Mike Elko, I think, has gone through the evaluation phase and now is ready to start landing commitments, getting guys on campus, getting them committed. It's going to be a very fun next couple of days and weeks for Texas A&M. We'll continue to break it down. I want to say thank you again to you guys checking the boys out. If you guys do enjoy the content, you enjoy the updates, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.